that have been hit hard. And one such sector is the tourism sector. That one has been hit hard. And indeed also the education sector, because especially in the private institutions, as far as it's concerned, they've been hit hard. So government has not sat and folded arms and said, what can we do? From the Ministry of Labour point of view and the labour policy, certain things have been done. Now, you have to understand that the Ministry of Labour is a tripartite institution. It deals with workers, employers, and government. So through this forum called Tripartite Consultative Labour Council, we had to make some proposals to exempt certain provisions of the law so that the employers can have some form of relief. And that was not just what ended there. We also provided that should employers feel that the exemptions given are not sufficient, they have an option of making an application for further exemptions after assessments are done by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. We have only seen about around 35 employers that really made an application to have certain provisions of the Employment Code or all the provisions of the Employment Code be exempted from them. But this has to go with the submission of the actual financial position of the company, so that if the exemption is based on reality rather than emotion, because you can't say you are the only one facing it, and yet you are not submitting what is tangible. So if it is indeed seen that the employers have to be exempted in certain provisions of the law, then those exemptions are granted. Currently, we have a team that has been working to look at those applications that came from the private sector. So that is what we've been doing. And also, we have been sensitizing the employers. But as you know, in a shrinked job market, there is quite some employers that take advantage and make shortcuts at exploiting the workers. And that means that you have people that arbitrarily works up without any form of regard for the law, cuts the salaries, or not pay the salaries, but workers are going for work, not even giving anything. Maybe they just wake up without an assessment, they cut the salaries. We have seen others that just wake up and terminate without due regard for the law. So those that have found themselves in such scenarios, once it is reported or when it comes to our attention, we have dealt with such employers.
You've talked about employers and what the ministry is doing, the proposals, and also employers coming forward to highlight the challenges that they're facing. How are you trying to harmonize the issue of employer-employee relationship in the face of COVID-19?
Good. You see, in the face of COVID, we cannot ignore the challenges that the employer is facing. We can't ignore that, because the businesses are affected in terms of the profitability, the markets, everything is affected. So we can't ignore that. But then, in employment relationship of such kind, consent is everything. You have to sit down with your employees and show them the challenges of the company. And if they have to make certain cuts, certain sacrifices, it must be with consent. It cannot be done arbitrarily. So workers know exactly the financial position of an institution. But it is this system where some employers hide information, the actual realities that is happening, and which causes them to be at loggerheads with the employers, the employees. So we encourage that kind of consultation. And we have seen certain instances where the trade unions have gone to discuss with their members and discuss with the employers and reduce they give up certain benefits for the sake of making the company survive. But that is based on being transparent. So that is the process that the ministry is pushing. That have internal engagement with the workers. What the ministry does not do, we are not employers activists, neither are we employees activists, no. We look at ensuring that no matter what the challenge the business is facing, there must be a balance between the fundamental rights at that place of work and the business interests. Because if we do not strike that balance, which is a very difficult one to do, you have to really ask critical questions for you to get to a point where you strike that balance. But the best people to strike that balance is the employees and the employers. Where there's a trade union, engage the workers' leaders and show them the realities of what the business is doing. They will not be adamant, especially Zambian workers. Zambian workers are not adamant. They understand. But don't dupe them. Duping them into them believing that the company is not doing well when actually it is doing fine. We have seen that others, even in this COVID, as you speak, there are certain businesses that are doing fine. For instance, the ones that are doing masks, the ones that are selling masks, sanitizers and others. They can't come and tell us that, no, the business is so bad. No, because everyone has upscaled the issues to do with how we combat COVID-19. So you see that businesses, processes are moving in that direction. So we don't expect such institutions to come and say, no, we're having a challenge. It is very difficult to prove. But if they can prove, then they can enjoy those exemptions.
Also, you've talked about employers not hiding information to their employees in the face of COVID. If things are not going well, they need more like your ministry is encouraging dialogue,
yes,
a win-win kind of a situation. Many are the times that Zambian employees have been duped by their employers. They're just told verbally to say, we are passing through this, it is a difficult time, stand with the company. When things improve, we are going to consider you, without signing anywhere. And it becomes very difficult. What is your ministry doing in regards to that? Okay. If an employee is promising something to the employee, if an employer is promising something to the employee, at least they have to sign somewhere.
And if
more like a backup.
You are absolutely right. In the Employment Code, number 3 of 2019, there are provisions that when you are changing any terms and conditions which the employee has, the consent must be gotten in writing, not verbally, because the employee can refuse at a certain point in time. You know, the employment relationship, you can abuse employees at your own peril. It is setting up yourself for failure when you start abusing your employees. Because if, for instance, there's nothing that is written, when the employee chooses to move on, maybe finds another job, he will demand, or she will demand, the payment of all those benefits that you are holding. Because she doesn't agree with you to say, cut this, cut that. Now, as long as the law provides for you to pay for that and you have decided not to pay, the employee has a right to claim for that. And doesn't matter at what stage. And you can't come and say, you say, I was going through problems. You can't use that, because if you're going through problems, government is saying, bring your problems, let's do an assessment, let's have a dialogue with your employees, so that a win-win situation is arrived at. Once they've consented, then you can implement. The employee cannot turn around and say, no, wait a minute, you gave me a road deal when they consented. It doesn't work that way. And that consent must not be forced, because again, there's a risk that when you say consent, then the employees have a piece of paper here and say, if you don't have a job, if you don't sign this, you don't have a job. We don't encourage that. That is why the Ministry of Labour and the Labour officers must ensure, and they ensure, that consent is not coerced, it's not forced. So once you see someone bring something that you want to consent, and you are not sure about it, raise an alarm to the Ministry of Labour that we have such a document that they want us to sign, but we don't agree with the terms. The Labour officer will move in and advise and ensure that that consent is actually obtained in the right way.
P.S., you talked about two sectors that have been affected. You talked about the tourism sector as well as education, the private sector. Now, what are some of the packages or relief packages that the Ministry of Labour has put in place to cushion the impact on our brothers and sisters that are in the private sector when it comes to the Ministry of Education or education sector, as well as those that are in the tourism sector. Is there any package or relief package that the ministry has put in place to help those brothers and sisters?
Okay. Firstly, you have to understand that the Ministry of Labor does not run businesses. It doesn't. It regulates the employment relationship. That's the first one. Now, when there are challenges of such nature, that's why if you heard what I said earlier, I said through the Tripartite Consultative Labor Council, we provided for certain relief. Now, let me give an example. If your institution is doing so bad, we said you can send employees on what? On forced leave, because provided under Section 48, and pay them the basic pay, which means the duty facilitating allowances are not there. That's the relief. Because now you take out all these allowances when the person is not working and staying at home and cut that. Then number two, we did suspend, we did exempt the provision of gratuity to senior management. So you can choose that to have a contract which doesn't have a gratuity as a person engaged in senior management. Thirdly, the issue of leave days. We also said we exempted the current provisions of the employment code from being applied and reverts you to the status before the employment code was enacted, which means the formula and the clauses that were in the contract still remain valid. So it is also one of those. And then again we say, if you are having challenges and you have specific things that you'd want to be exempted with, provide your financials. So they are assessed. You are asked questions about them. You know that the tourism sector, why it has been negatively affected, and we have spoken about this for quite some time. Most of the big tour operators or the big hotels, usually they don't have a strong financial base in country. First of all, their marketing was done externally. They have headquarters in maybe South Africa, London, and elsewhere. So when they advertise, for instance, Victoria Falls as a tourist destination, someone will pay in London through that process. He will only arrive with an air ticket, is picked from the airport and taken all the way through using that payment which he did in London and he didn't stay here. So therefore, if you say, can you bring your financials so that we see how you are doing, it becomes a big challenge, because we can say, let's see how the people that were visiting you, how they were paying and stuff like that. They may not even have their financial records around here. They depend on the external financial records and stuff like that. So some of them have been found in such a scenario. So now they have a difficult in terms of proving. That's why we tell them to say, when government has provided an enabling environment like you have to create wealth, ensure that you have a solid base in this country where you are investing. We have seen that same system apply to some of the shops that you saw close very recently. Here is a shop that comes, this is a chain store, comes in Zambia, employs maybe 200 people, it has branches somewhere, and then it sets a financial base in another country. And when salaries for the workers are being paid, they are just being wired. Electronic means, so everyone gets his salary. But someone is just sitting in his office of the comforts of another foreign country, and he pays. When his management staff he wants to buy even something worth 250 kwacha, they have to request for outside the country. So when now they had problems with COVID and things started to collapse, they want to just wind down and run away. Like tell people, no, we are having problem, we're closing, without paying the workers. Now, we can't allow that. So we tell them, no, wait a minute, you're not going to go anywhere. You have liabilities here. Pay the workers first. But because they're not here, at times they become fluid. So these are some of the challenges that sectors are happening because they don't have a financial base here. They're not growing their even money here in the country. There's capital flight. Now, it has come to catch up with them because now the liabilities which they have here must be done within here. You find some people now want to go and make reference to another country. oh no, we got instruction from another country. We tell them, no, you can't get instruction from a company that has no base here, it has no registration here. We can't allow that. So we are saying that let's have to strike balance. When you're having challenges, come clean. We sit down, we talk about them, we see how best to help and address those challenges.
Yes, with the example that you've given, we did see indeed some chain stores and shops closing, winding down in this country, and employees were thrown into the court. Now that the ministry is aware that some of these companies that set up shops in this country, they have got their own base in different countries. Moving forward, what are some of the plans that the ministry has put in place to make sure that such things don't happen?
In fact, we have not allowed it, first, number one. When the moment it has, the only problem we've been having is, at times, the lack of patriotism by ourselves as Zambians.
When you say ourselves, you mean the employees?
All of us. Because...
Including government?
No. Not government, because government is not aware at the time this is happening. They are using the Zambian managers.
Okay.
First of all, someone comes and employs you as a manager operations. And you know that there is no account, financial account, which this person is operating here. And it's okay with you. And they are used to oppress your colleagues in Zambia. Yes. The only time that we're going to know is when now the problems start within yourselves. That's when you want to come and say, oh, wait a minute, like in cases that I'm telling you about. Because we're expecting you as a Zambian to put your country first and to put your people first before you put anyone else first. So we are coming to intervene at a point now we start having critical questions. You were manager operations, you were manager HR, you were director of this. Guys, you didn't see this coming? No, we saw it, but we thought things... How? You even facilitate. You facilitate the suffering of your fellow Zambians. And then, at the end of it, you come and blame government. And what is worse is this. We are seated in the Ministry of Labor. Someone believes that, the Ministry of Labor is compromised, who has never been at the Ministry of Labor. He has not taken a complaint there. He has not done anything. But he comes here probably on this side and says, that ministry is very dead. Yes. I want you to be asking them questions. Number one, when was the last time you went to Ministry of Labor? When was the last time you went and got a copy of a policy document? A copy of a statutory instrument? When was the last time you did
Yes, is it always that people should visit the ministry or maybe labor commissioners and inspectors should be visiting these companies? How is it supposed to work?
You are right. First of all, we have that inspectorate unit. They do that regularly. But you see, I give one example. When you are sick of COVID and you're in your house, what will happen? You will die there, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a doctor? You can't complain in the house. I have COVID, I'm in the house here, the doctors are doing nothing. Or you've been assaulted. And then we know that when you're assaulted, you go to the police station. You report, they give you a medical certificate, then they do that. Now imagine you're assaulted and you're in the house. The police are very useless, they're not doing anything. I'm here assaulted. Yes, you are going to die with that wound and stuff because nothing will happen. We tell people, when you're having these challenges, come and report. But if you don't report, and then you expect that, a labor officer or a labor PS or a labor commissioner is going all knowing to dream that, people are being exploited here. Here is another example. People get locked. Someone, somehow, he convinces a very same group of employees that he means so well. And the minister and the government are so bad. Why? They are in his pocket. Therefore, you can't go and report. Now, he says that, and you believe without having to go and say, let me go and test how far this buying is. You trust a person who is underpaying you, who is exploiting you, who is doing everything wrong because he's foreign. He has a lighter skin than myself. I've spoken about this more now almost 4 times. Because he has a lighter skin than mine, Therefore, this guy is all-knowing. He's going to tell you the truth. But your fellow Zambian there, who is a labor officer seated waiting that if there's a problem, he moves in, you don't trust him. You have never seen him. You have never even been there. Just because this person who's exploiting you now, he's telling you the truth. People lie. And they're lying, and they know that because we are not being patriotic to ourselves, we are not trusting ourselves. We are not trusting government. Government has put in some of the best laws in Africa, even globally. You can peg our laws against any because we are very balanced and we provide for issues to do with consultation, issues to do with how you can do things. But people don't take 4 pages of a statutory instrument which is telling you the do's and don'ts, what an employer cannot do. You don't read them. All you do is you go and say, oh, the Ministry of Labour is so compromised and that. How compromised are you? And I want also you, as Muvi TV, when people come here and complain, ask them 3 basic questions. Number 1, this issue of labour, have you been to the Ministry of Labour? If the answer is yes, who have you seen? Not by, say, so let them give you the name. Number 3, what have you been told? Because then it makes it matter is because we are employed as labor officers and the Ministry of Labour to help and work for the Zambian people. So if we have a person who is not working for the Zambian people, we need to check him out. So we need that information to be given out.
Yes, there are people that are watching and probably they have been told that there are procedures to be followed. If you want to complain or you are a whistleblower and you want to unearth certain things that are happening in your company, are there any procedures to follow for one to come to the minister and report? And if you, the question that you've said we should be asking to say, who did you see? They should provide the name. What is the procedure? Is there any procedure for one to make a complaint?
Yes, and it's a very simple one. Just like any other procedure that government uses. If you are going to police station, you don't set an appointment. Now let me go to police station for an appointment, isn't it? When you are sorted, you simply walk to the police station.
Yes.
That's the same procedure. If you have a labor complaint, you simply walk to the labor office. I have a problem in ABCD. Now, labor officers, we ask a few things as well. Okay, do you belong to a trade union? What kind of employment relationship do you have? So we don't just say, oh, you have come here, so you've been fired. No, we ask a few questions. Do you have a contract? Yes. Are you unionized? Yes. Now, if you are unionized, we say, what is the union's comment on this matter? Because you pay the unions to protect your fundamental rights at that place of work and to ensure that your interests are protected and upheld throughout. We ask those questions. Number 3, what happened? Now, when you explain, we will not believe you because you've come to report. We write to the employer to come.
You don't visit?
No. First of all, because that is the complaint you brought. So we write to the employer to come.
So after the complaint, you write?
Yes, we direct an employer to come. That's a lawful instruction.
Okay.
If the employer doesn't come, you can do 2 things. You can report to police. It's very easy. It now becomes a criminal matter. Failure to follow what? A lawful instruction by a public officer. It is there in the penal code. So the employer would come. Now, when the employer comes, it is that moment that we are discussing now, using collective bargaining facilities where possible. That is what is in the law. So at that point, you discuss and you advise the employer, oh, this is a breach here, you count 1, 2, 3, so go correct this and go and pay. Last year, we were around 10 million kwacha collected on behalf of people. That brought complaints to the ministry. If they did not, that 10 million would have gone under. So, if there is a case, we'll tell you that there is. Now, if you probably went drunk, or you absconded, or you went on an illegal strike, now you are fired, then you come to the ministry, you want to be protected. We shall not protect you. We will tell you the employer is right on this matter. And that is a cry where you hear that, oh, we went to the Ministry of Labour, nothing happened. Something happened.
Don't you think it is because of someone reports and then you summon the employer without that person being present?
No.
Because these are
that person has to be. In fact, you set the date for that employer to come with the employee.
Okay.
So I will write to the employer and say, come on a Wednesday, 10 hours. If possible, give the employee to take that letter to the employer. so that he knows that 10 hours is coming.
So it doesn't happen whereby an employee complains to you, then you summon an employer in his absentia and talk about these issues.
In fact, as an employee, if you see that, you know that the officer who is doing it wrong. When the employee has to, when the labor officer has to deal with a matter, you have to be present. If you're not present, that meeting is how is he adjudicated on it when the other person is not
Should
present?
they go and report to?
In fact,
the next office?
that is why now the administrative escalation is there. That is why if it's a labor officer, there are senior labor officers, principal, assistant commissioners, and labor commissioner. And then it goes to PS and stuff like that now as administration. Because commissioners, labor commissioners' decisions go to court if you're not happy with them. Or you appeal to the minister, where the provisions are that you can appeal to the minister. You don't appeal to the PS to change the labor commissioner's decisions, no. So, those are statutory powers. And we make decisions like that. Now, the labor office and the ministry is not the final authority. We can make a decision, and where the employer feels that, no, you've made the wrong decision, or where the employee himself feels that this decision is not in my best interest, you take the matter to court. And we shall help you that, oh, here is a report of what we did. Take the matter to court. And the person takes the matter to court. And the person to refer the matter to court, usually, it is with authority from the Labor Commission. Because the Labor Commission now would have adjudicated at the highest level and they say, you can now take this matter to court. And when it gets to court, the court will make a decision. And that decision guides both ourselves and everyone else. That is why the courts are very important and we respect the decisions of the court. Don't attempt to say, hey, you know, when people are appointed as judges, they are a certain level of responsibility and integrity. So we respect that.
Everyone is looking at the gloomy picture of the impact of COVID-19. Others are now staying at home. And there was an issue of the non-essential workers, others being considered as essential workers. What are some of the lessons that Zambians or government or people can learn in regards with what has happened due to COVID-19? Are there any lessons that we can learn moving forward? Of
course. One, you see, the pandemic caught all of us off guard. You know, we didn't expect it to go to the level it has gone. Now, it has taught us lessons to plan ahead. We need to start planning quite ahead of a lot of other things within the labor market. And that we have started. One of it is that going into the sector regulations, involve the sector, discuss the challenges of the sector so that you consult and deal with the sector. And that is what you see we start to discuss on issues to do with minimum wages within the sector. Because within those minimum wages, not just the minimum wages that are there are other conditions of employment. And that comes from employment code. That's why it calls minimum wages and conditions of service. So the SI deals with the minimum and also the conditions of service. Now, the conditions of service that we discuss with the employers, the workers, and government, and we agree. So that we now start to address the sector challenges rather than using the same yardstick for everybody. For instance, I think you've seen that we are talking about having a sector-based minimum wage for the information and communication sector, including the journalists.
Yes.
You must have certain rules and standards. Half a time, and this I say without shame, you play a very critical role as journalists. You inform, you entertain, and you educate. But you can't have every Jim and Jack just from the street, oh, I'm a journalist, and he's writing. The president said, social media is for everybody, including ourselves. But journalism is not for everybody. It's for trained people. And those trained people must have a certain standard and must have a certain expectation, and they must be paid in a certain manner. So when we start the consultative process, we expect you people to be there so that the sector challenges are done. This is what lesson we're learning from COVID. Let's deal with sectors so that each sector is properly consulted, properly regulated, properly remunerated in line with the core function and core values of that sector. We have learned that lesson. Number two, we have also learned that we need to strengthen the monitoring mechanisms, because if we do not, then abuse kicks in. Now, abuse is not just the employees that are abused. The employers are also abused. Because certain workers now take advantage and say, because of COVID, they will do one or two things, do this and that. And, when the employer says, no, don't you know that there's COVID? And at times they come to complain on things that are not real. So abuse can happen. So we must be able to strike that balance.
0978594682 is the number. On the program, I have Labour Permanent Secretary helping us answer some important questions in regards to COVID-19. Different sectors have been, hit left, right, and center. And the PS has mentioned that the tourism sector, as well as the education sector, those that are in private schools, have not been spared. These are the sectors that have been hit so hard. If you have a question or a complaint, or if you reported the matter, or if you got an issue, this is the time that you have. You can call in on the number 0978594682. You can ask that question, and I hope and trust that the PS will be able to respond to that, question. PS, the issue of unemployment in this country, we've had it even before COVID-19. Now with the COVID-19, how are the numbers on the ground?
Yeah, what we've seen from the Ministry of Labour point of view is that there has been quite significant growth on the lower end jobs. Quite significant growth because of the huge infrastructure development that the country has seen. So there has been also the issues of tourism and also agriculture and all that. So we have seen quite an expansion. But as you start to go up, the numbers don't look good because of now we're wanting to start a shrinking kind of labor market. Yes, there's a challenge because certain businesses and certain economic activities that should be able to stimulate the jobs have been hindered with the advent of COVID-19. So it starts to either reduce slightly the numbers or remain the way the numbers are looking at. But we have been hit in terms of really the numbers. And that is why you see stimulus packages, government coming with programs that are able to provide some incentives in the economy so that businesses have some kind of leverage, and they start to kind of still inject their development, their expansion, so that we can get some people to get to work. But right now it is a challenge in terms of the numbers that we might be looking out for.
Issues to do with casualization, PS, is another issue that we've been facing as a country even before COVID-19, and now people's income has gone down. There is an example of our brothers and sisters who are maids as well as garden boys or garden men. Their wages also gone down. Are you also considering, moving in and helping or reminding those employers to say there is a minimum wage?
No.
Others, there is a message to say others are even getting 400, 500.
To the contrary. The maids have a statutory instrument. 2018, it went to 840, and with the other benefits, 940. So there is a minimum wage which is up there. Now, you remember what I talked about when I said consent is everything in employment relationship, when you want to touch the conditions of service. So, in terms of government leading and providing that legal framework which protects the workers, we did that. Now, here is what I spoke about earlier, that if there is a law and someone chooses deliberately to underpay you, don't go into fighting. Because when you start fighting, he will find a way of getting rid of you. Don't start fighting. This is a free advice I give to everyone. Because there's even a court judgment on people that behave like that. when you want to separate, simply request for your arrears. Simply request. So if that is the domestic worker, you're supposed to be paying her 800, and then you're giving her 400. What will stop you from? Tell me what will stop you from paying her arrears? Tell me what. When you ignore the law, which says this is what you should pay them, and then you choose not to pay her deliberately, tell me which law you are going to use not to say that this is why you didn't agree with her. You just cut the salary without her knowledge. You forced her. Tell me when she goes to court what you counter measure would be. You will end up paying more. You will pay.
So if the domestic worker was getting 900 and then the employer decides, say, things are not well with me, you'll be getting 400.
There are solutions to that. That's why there is hourly pay. There's an hourly pay for a domestic worker. Not all of us can pay 800. Not all of us. That is why the law has provided for a solution to say, if you want a domestic worker to work for 2 hours or 5 hours, pay for the number of hours that person is working. And after that, let her go home. But don't keep her from 7 to 17. From 6:30 she's at home and she's knocking off at 19. Then you want to pay her 400. No, the law doesn't allow you. That's abuse now. Because she's paid for the number of hours she's working, not for the number of hours she's seated. So if you choose to keep her seated at home and do stuff, well and good, you will pay. Pay the hourly rate for a domestic worker so that when she's not working, she goes home and rests. So that she can work elsewhere and make a few. You can even pay as low as 300 if the number of hours are amounting to 300. But don't make it universal that you are going to keep this maid from 7 to 17 at times and 19. And then pay her 400.
So if you're proposing an adjustment, then you need even to consider the number of hours or the number of days?
No, the law has fixed what you should pay if a person is working for a day. It has prescribed. And it has also prescribed an hourly rate.
So if you want to cut from, for example, the 900, you say I'm paying you 500, you need also to consider...
You need to cut the number of hours she's working.
If you don't do that?
You will pay 900. Well, okay, tell me how you would do it. If the law is telling you to say, if a person works from 6 to 8 hours of work, is after a month is going to be paid 800 kwacha. And then you choose to cut and then still use her for 8 hours. Tell me how that balances up. Does it make sense? It doesn't. So there is a simple rule. If you can't pay, please don't employ, because you're causing destitution. If you can't pay, don't employ, because the person working has also a life away from you who or she's working for, has a life. So don't bring somebody and don't pay them and then they're working for you. It is wrong. And as Zambians, collectively, we must say no to that.
Yes, there is another issue. You've talked about if you can't pay, don't employ.
Simple.
But there are companies that were doing fine. But because of COVID, the income generation has gone down. And they are saying we can separate, but we don't have money to pay you now.
Yes.
But are you going to allow us maybe to pay you in the future or to be paying you? Is that allowed?
It's allowed because you are going to bring that to the attention of the employee. And when the employee consents, what did I say? Consent is everything. Then you move on in that direction. Because now it is a right the employee has.
So there's no infringement there?
No, there's no infringement because the employer has accepted. What we say no to is where you wake up and say, oh, I will not pay. Make commitments in writing. So that even if in future you say, I'm not going to pay, the employee will say, oh, wait a minute, but here's my document that I signed with you. In this document, you said you're going to pay when things get better.
What if an employee refuses to say, Inesha ndi mwalampe la papeni, takulifia kwa watu mkampera nani, nif paper sha sign. Who is that for? Or where should they go?
Good. There is a provision where the employer must write to the commissioner. So the commissioner can make a determination on the staggered payment that the employee wants to do. Because now there's a separation there. So because it doesn't have the money,
So separation is allowed.
it's allowed, but it has to be within the confines of the law.
And even the mode of payment.
Yes, the mode of payment, because now the commissioner moves in with his team now to say, okay, wait a minute, because you can't say ine mwana mperesha ndio chetakweta omuntu ngatakweta alafu myakwi so nomba because wali muombera naye wali kwatemisha shove so afuile apanga plani ya kukuperelamu iyo plani iwa commissioner bala yasuminisha nokwamba kukuperera mwisho impira bali impira sho wabombera takwa uwinga shiria yo nga walishibombera ufuile wapuka.
Okay. Just there is a question. I don't know if you handle this. This one says, if you could briefly explain the NAPSA Act in relation to getting lumps at retirement and not getting the lumps but remaining on payroll. Okay. Are workers at liberty to choose?
Okay. Thank you very much. We move now from these labor matters into social security, which is also like, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Yes.
So, NAPSA has people that started work from 2000 coming up. That is mostly people that are at NAPSA. PSPF has people that started work before 2000 and also has the defense and the security wings into that scheme. And LASIF has the people that are from ZESCO and the other local government authorities that were at the time working for those institutions. Now, NAPSA, there is a provision that if the regulations are done, you can get a lump sum. But currently, you can't get a lump sum from NAPSA. And NAPSA has pension rules that have made the fund sustainable in a very progressive manner. Why? Because what you are paid is a career average of probably 5 years. So your take home is better than any other pension scheme, basic pension scheme. So if you stop today and you're filled in all your forms, you start getting a salary the next month for life if you worked for the number of years that it makes you qualify. So yes, that discussion under pension reform is what is being discussed right now to see, can we introduce a lump sum? Now you have to understand, lump sum doesn't work. Lump sum in this country has not worked because people will not start to invest. They don't build anything until they retire and they want to come and build a house from pension money. Pension money, you can't build a house. That is why a lot of destruction is happening. When people got lump sums, sometimes you remember there were a lot of canters. Everyone who got retired went and bought a canter and employed the driver who actually got rich over the owner of the canter, and the owner of the canter ended up dying in destitution. So there has been discussions that which formula should we keep, because NAPSA looks a bit more sustainable and it is paying slightly higher. Mind you, PSPF, you can get as low as 400 because you got your lump sum. So when you got your lump sum, which was 2/3 of your pension, now you have a 1/3 remaining. So probably you are getting 20,000 kwacha every month. Then all of a sudden you start getting 2,000 kwacha. Not even 2,000, maybe 1,000 kwacha, 1,500, because you've been given the lump sum. The pre-employment life doesn't add up. Because then this is the money that you remain with for the next 15, 20 years before you die. But then it becomes a quick throw to the grave. That's why NAPSA came in with a more sustainable and a higher kind of pay than the other two schemes. But this is a discussion which must be very intense, with critical examples, because there's just this notion that everyone must get a lump sum. Yes, we can discuss to a certain extent that maybe we see how the decision, how people are feeling about it. Because you see, nothing is cast in concrete. If people feel like we should be able to get lump sum from NAPSA, then we can look at the provisions of the law and research. Mind you, there is always, after 3 years, an actuarial evaluation, which gives you the status of the fund. It gives you what you can do with the money and what you can't do. So if the actuary is assessed to say, okay, now we can introduce a lump sum at maybe 2% or 10%, then that is possible, because now they would have analyzed the fund and now have guided that with this, the fund will still be there, people are still getting money at the right times and stuff like that. Because other schemes are difficult. We have deficits that are way huge than actually what the person has contributed. So government has to find the money to push in there. And we are happy that we have had good support. We are happy that government has supported that position. You remember the president spoke about it, that we are going to accelerate in terms of how we deal with the pensioners. And we're happy that we've reduced the waiting period for the pensioners.
Yes, also, in the face of COVID, we've seen, people taking over certain companies or the running of certain companies. And how is it supposed to be done? If a company was in the hands of certain directors and now there is a change of ownership, others are coming up to, have come in to take over the running of the company and the employees, how is it supposed to be done? Should the former employers call the workers and tell them, say, these are your new employees, and if at all there are outstanding balances or arrears, how is it supposed to be done? Should just some people, is it just possible for people just to come in and take over the company and say, oh, for those arrears, maybe you can go to your former employee as we've started afresh?
There's a requirement that if you are taking over a company, you are taking its liabilities as well as probably assets. Now, if there are workers that you are taking over, what conditions are you putting on the table? Are you tampering with their conditions of service? If you tamper with their conditions of service, that it is now to their disadvantage.
New management.
Yes, if the new management takes over a company and it tampers with the conditions and that it is to the disadvantage of the employee, you will pay the redundancy package.
The new management?
Yes, the new management
has to pay the redundancy package.
Yes. You will pay. You have to start a new chapter because you are coming with your own rules and stuff like that. So separate from the old guy to this new guy who comes with his new rules. So don't attempt to make conditions worse off for the workers. That triggers a redundancy. It is not that the workers will have to say, no, now, the law has prescribed that it triggers a redundancy. So when you are taking over, be very careful with those specific provisions of the law.
So if you are taking over and maybe employees were getting a certain amount, you can't even change the salary.
You can change it. Oh, you can temper with the salary by taking it up.
I mean, taking it down.
No, you can't do that.
You can't take it down.
No, you can't. You can't do that.
But if there is that, shift from old management to new management, should employees be told, or they should?
Of course, they must be told, and because you see, that's why we expect that when you're taking over, you're making things better. You're not making things worse off, and this is a problem. You want to take over, and then you want now to start suppressing the workers. No. When you take over, make things better.
What if you don't have the capacity to make things
Why should
better?
you? The simple question is that why should you even take over then? Because then you can't take, you can't take over because you're making things worse. So why should you take over to make? So you take over to make things worse? No. That takeover is wrong, and it has to be assessed from all fronts by government. The goodness with government systems are that we consult each other and see how we can deal with one problem. That's why we have ministries within government. It's a government system. We go and ask. We ask our colleagues at ZRA, we ask our colleagues at, how is this being done? And then different laws come at play together. And then we deal with the matter.
Others have, called labor commissioners as well as labor inspectors of being corrupt, that they visited our company and then they went into a closed-door meeting without any representative from the employees, but they just sat in a meeting and they discussed with management. From there, management just told us, say, go back to work. Is it also allowed that if inspectors visit a certain company, they should hold a meeting with management without any representative from the employees, and thereafter, without even informing the employees, say, we had a fruitful meeting with your management or your bosses, and moving forward, this is what is supposed to be done?
If such an inspector, if we know about such an inspector who behaves exactly the way we've explained, we will deal with that. We will deal with him. Because there's no way you can get an inspection and not speak to the workers. When you do an inspection, you have to speak to the workers. Now, if the workers are represented, then you speak to the union to give information, feedback to the workers. So those inspectors, those are the ones that I'm telling you to say. We are paid by government to do a service for the Zambian people and on behalf of Zambian people. Zambian people come first. Now, then you find the officer behave like we have explained. We don't need such an officer to actually do inspections. He is wrong. But I can assure you that my inspectors don't do that. Usually when they do inspection, they go and have a meeting with the workers. Now the problem comes that at times they are having a meeting with the selected workers who themselves have said these are the ones that are going to be in the meeting.
Yes.
And those that have been in the meeting, they don't disseminate information back to the friends. Then those that were not in the meeting go and say, oh, you didn't even see us. So now at times they want you to talk to them at individual level. It is not possible that in a company of maybe 300, you're going to speak to all the 300 and have a lot. You can cause a disruption. And inspections are not about disruption to the productive process of the company. No. They're about enhancing the relationship and also correcting the ills that may be wrong. That is why we do those routine inspections. But those inspections that we do where you see us get upset and probably chase a few people and, it is those that have been abusive. And that's why I tell you to say, at times the challenge is within ourselves as Zambians. They lock you up like that. You don't say. Someone who is just passing by, he sees someone, peeping at a very small. Well, then he asks, what are you doing there? I say, no, I've been here for the last 3 months. Come on, guys. You have a family, you have friends, or what? And this person who is actually saying that has even a phone. He can't even call 911. You say, I think the situation under which we are sitting here is not correct. Zero. We can't behave like that.
P.S., we have to go. Thank you so much for making an appearance, and thank you so much for explaining at length and answering to those questions and queries that Zambian employees have had for so long. And now they know that there are these procedures, and if at all they see an inspector who does what you've just explained, I think that is not an inspector.
That is not an inspector. And just my last word to the Zambian workers. First, the Zambian workers are very loyal workers. They are very good in all sectors. They deserve better. Please, employers, don't exploit the workers. They are very, very important. Then second, let's be patriotic. Let's be patriotic to support each other and support the government systems. Right now, the government is a strictly pro-poor government, taking the interests of the vulnerable. But the vulnerable must stand up so that together we face the abusers. We correct this country for the betterment. That is what the president is expecting us to do. And for Ministry of Labour, we should ensure that that is done and that we protect the rights and fundamental principles of the place of work.
There you have it. This has been the special interview, Saturday's edition, the 30th of January. My guest has been Labour Permanent Secretary, who is Chanda Kaziya, answering to those questions that you've had on behalf of Mavuto Puri, the producer as well as director of the program. My name is Kelvin Tabola, Chief for Good night.